Hello! Today we are taking a look at Wingspan, and the whole goal of this game is to rack up victory points by gathering resources, which you'll use to play birds that have different powers, and then using all these resources and birds will give you bonus points with goals set each round. So, let's get started. First off, every player gets 1 player mat, 8 action cubes of 1 color, 2 random bonus cards, 5 random bird cards, and 1 of each food token, making 5 total tokens. You can choose whether or not to show your cards throughout the whole game, and then from there you can keep up to 5 bird cards and discard the rest. The thing is, you have to discard 1 food token for each bird card that you want to keep. So for example, I can keep 2 bird cards and 3 food tokens. So generally you want to keep the food tokens shown in the upper left of the bird card so you can play that bird. With the 2 bonus cards each player got, look at each of them, but you only get to keep 1 and then discard the other one. Well, lastly, pick a random player to go first and then give them this first player marker. That's the player setup. Now to set up the board, shuffle the bird cards into a deck, place them inside the bird tray, and then put 3 face-up bird cards on the lid. Then set aside the food and egg tokens into the general supply. Now they don't have to be separated, but I just did it because it kind of bothers me if they're all mixed together. Then you want to roll food dice into the bird feeder dice tower, and then pick which goals you want to play with and put the chosen side face up. There are 2 colors to choose from. The green side lets you have more direct competition for goals. This is the side that has the first, second, and third place for each goal, and the default side for the game. Now the blue side lets you have less direct competition between each other, and is the side that gives 1 point for each targeted item. So from there, even if your goal tiles are double-sided, shuffle those without looking at them, and then put 1 goal tile with the random side up on each of the 4 blank spaces on the goal board. And then lastly, shuffle the bonus cards into the deck and put those on the table. There are 4 rounds in the game, and you take turns going clockwise until each player uses up all their available action cubes. So let's talk about the 4 possible actions you have available on your turn, which are all conveniently located on the left side of your player board. The first option is to play a bird from your hand. So first take a action cube and put it on this space. Now you'll notice that the second and third column have this egg cost across the top, meaning you have to pay 1 egg to play a bird in these 2 columns, and then 2 eggs to play a bird in these 2 columns. So pay the egg cost by discarding eggs from any birds on your player mat. Then on your bird card, you'll see a food cost on the top left corner. Discard food tokens and match that cost to the supply. If it's a wild icon, you can actually use any of the 5 types of food for it. Plus signs mean you have to pay both, and a slash means you can pay one of those listed resources. Now after paying the egg and food costs, place the bird on the leftmost exposed slot in the corresponding habitat, and then move your action cube to the left side of the play a bird roll. There's a forest, grassland, and wetland habitat, and if the bird has multiple habitat symbols, you can actually choose any habitat for it to be placed in, with 5 being the max per habitat. If a bird has a power that says, when played, now is when you trigger the effect. And before we move on, keep in mind that playing a bird is the only action that doesn't activate a row of birds. Okay, so your second action is to gain food and activate bird powers. If you want to perform this action, put an action cube into the leftmost exposed slot in this row, which will be the second column since we have a bird in the first slot, and gain the amount of food shown from the dice that you picked from the bird feeder. Oh, where's my bird feeder and dice, you ask? I lost it. So for each of the food that you gain, remove a die from the bird feeder and put it on the table, then gain a food token matching the icon on the die and put it next to your player mat. Your food tokens are not a secret and everyone's allowed to see it. And also, you'll always gain 1 food token per die. So if the die face shows 2 different foods, gain 1 token of either type, not 2 tokens. You also notice that with the more birds you have, the stronger your actions become. So let's say you have 5 birds in the slot and you use gain food. You gain 3 dice. If the slot where you put the action cube shows a card to food bonus conversion, you can actually discard 1 bird card max from your hand to gain more food, but it's an optional action. Now from there, activate any brown powers on your forest birds from right to left. All powers are optional, and you end your turn by placing an action cube on the left side of the gain food row. Now 2 quick notes on the bird feeder and food tokens. When you take dice from the bird feeder, they remain outside the tray until the bird feeder is refilled, and if it's ever empty, that's when you can throw dice back in the tray. If they're all the same face, including if it's only 1 die, and you're about to gain food for any reason, you can actually throw all 5 dice back into the bird feeder. Now for food tokens, know that there's no limit to them. Action 3 is to lay eggs and activate grassland bird powers. You can use eggs to pay the cost of birds in columns 2 through 5, and eggs on the bird cards on your player mat are worth 1 point at the end of the game. If you choose to lay eggs, first put the action cube on the leftmost slot of this row and then lay the number of eggs by taking an egg token from the supply, color doesn't matter, and place it on the bird card that has space for it depending on its egg limit shown on the left side of the card. Now eggs will stay there until the end of the game until it gets discarded, and you can lay eggs on any combination of birds including all on 1 bird, but just remember that each bird has a certain limit. So if you happen to gain eggs that's over a certain bird's limit, those extra eggs are actually lost. Now just like the conversion symbols in gain food, sometimes you have a slot where you put your action cube that shows a food to egg bonus conversion. Now if so, you can pay 1 food token max to get another egg and then activate brown powers on the birds from right to left. Remember, all powers are optional. You finish your turn by placing an action cube on the left side of the lay eggs row, and just like food tokens, egg tokens are also unlimited. There are also 4 types of nests called the platform, the bowl, the cavity, and the ground nests. Star nests are the wild nests, and they're actually important for end of round goals and bonus cards. Now the last option is to draw bird cards and activate wetland bird powers. So action cubes to the left of the row as per usual, then you're going to draw the number of cards there from either the face-up cards on the bird tray or from the bird deck. Now this game has no hand limit, so you can hold as many cards as you would like. If the slot where you put your action cube has that egg to card bonus conversion, you can actually discard 1 egg to draw another card. Again, this is optional. So activate brown powers on your wetland birds from right to left. And for the bird deck, these face-up cards are not immediately refilled when you draw them. Instead, you're going to wait until the end of your turn before refilling empty spaces on the bird tray. If the face-down deck is ever emptied, you can reshuffle the discarded birds to form a brand new deck. Now at the end of each round, discard any remaining face-up cards and replenish them with 3 new ones. Okay, so this game is nice because you take your turns pretty fast. You take one of your 4 actions by placing a cube in the leftmost exposed slot, gain or pay resources, move your cube to the action slot, and then next player's turn, and you keep going until everyone runs out of action cubes for this round. So if you want to play a bird card, you pay the egg cost depending on which column it's in, and you also pay the food cost too. Then you put your bird on the leftmost exposed slot, matching its habitat, and then moving your action cube to the left. You can also activate bird powers if it's triggered when played, but then the question is, well, how do I get resources to pay for the bird? Leading you to action 2, which is to gain food and activate 4's bird powers. Action cube to the left, take a dive from the bird feeder, and then gain 1 of that food token. Now remember, with these conversion symbols, you can pay an extra of that symbol to gain another one, so I can discard a bird card to gain 1 more die. If you want to lay eggs, cube, gain eggs to put on birds right away, activate brown powers, cube back here. So you can play a bird, you can gain food and eggs to pay for those birds, but then eventually you run out of bird cards. So to complete the cycle, the last option is to draw bird cards. Cube, draw cards, convert for more if you want to, activate brown powers from right to left, then the cube shifts to the left side. So we mentioned bird powers throughout the video, but let's take a second to look at all 3. So if there's no color, these powers are the ones that are activated only when you play the bird. Brown powers activate from right to left whenever you use the corresponding habitat. If your birds have this symbol, it means that it's a predator. It's pretty cool because that means when you activate the power, it gets cached, meaning the food token stays on this bird and is worth 1 victory point at the very end. If it has this symbol, it means it's a flock, so you'll tuck cards underneath it in order to make that flock. And the third type of powers are the pink powers, which happens once between turns, so these are conditional. In this case, if another player plays a forest bird, then you gain 1 invertebrate token. So after everyone takes their turn clockwise, you'll reach the end of the round. There are 4 things that you perform when this happens. First, take all of your action cubes from your mat. Second, remember these goals that we set up in the beginning? Well, now you're going to score the end of round goal for the round that you just finished. If you're playing on the blue side, you put your action cube to mark, for instance, the total amount of birds that you played this round. If you played on the more challenging green side, you get ranked by whoever has the most birds, and that person will get first place. If there's a tie, you put the tie players in the same slot, but skip the slot for the next person. So for a 3-player game, first 2 goes in the same slot, we skip 1, and then put the 3rd player here. This means you'll have 1 less action to perform each round since 1 cube will remain on these goals. So we took all our action cubes from the player mat, we scored the end of round goals. Next, we discard all face-up bird cards on the tray and replace them with new ones, and then give the first player token clockwise to the next player. Endgame is triggered when round 4 is over. Now you add up points for each bird shown with this feather symbol on each card. Add points for each of the bonus cards that you have, points from the end of round goals, and lastly 1 point for each egg on the bird cards, food tokens cached on the predators, and cards tucked underneath for flocks. Most victory points win. So let's set up for solo rules now. You'll be playing against the Automa, so give the Automa 8 action cubes of 1 color, and they also recommend you use the green side of the goal board. Shuffle the Automa cards and place the current round tracker to the left of those cards. And before you deal bonus cards to yourself, draw and reveal 1 card for the Automa. If the bonus card is Breeding Manager or Backyard Birder, or if it doesn't show a percentage of cards at the bottom, return it and pick another one until you get one. Then place the end of round goal scoring card with round 1 facing up next to the round 1 goal tile of the goal board. Then choose your difficulty level. All that means is that the Automa will get more and more points for each face down bird card, as well as the Automubon, if I'm saying that right, society card, which will make the Automa more competitive. Now before we get into the actions, know that the Automa doesn't play by the rules, so here are 5 things that change. 1. The Automa does not get a player mat. 2. It doesn't collect food tokens. 3. It will gather eggs and birds, but only to score those at the end of the game. 4. The Automa doesn't need to pay for anything. And 5. The Automa doesn't benefit from any bird powers. Now on the Automa's turn, you draw 1 card from the Automa deck and place it face up on top of any previously revealed Automa cards, and you line it up with the arrow on the current round tracker card, which points to the action that you'll use for this round. Now the Automa's actions are different, so when it draws cards, it actually discards all 3 face-up cards from the tray, draws 1 from the face down deck, and then places it face down in the Automa supply. These are the ones worth 3, 4, 5 points, depending on the difficulty level that you chose. Now, when the Automa plays a bird, from the 3 face-up ones, it actually picks up all the birds that meet the requirements of the Automa bonus card, and it keeps the one with the highest value. But if it's tied value, it only keeps 1. Now, these will remain face-up in the Automa supply. If no birds meet the conditions, draw 1 face-down bird for its supply. The lay eggs action is the same, so the Automa literally just gains the corresponding amount of eggs. But remember, the Automa doesn't gain food, so using this legend starting from left to right, pick the first die face available in the bird feeder and remove all die with that face from the bird feeder, so the Automa doesn't gain food, but eliminates the food supply. Now, this symbol means you put one of the Automa's action cubes on the current round's goal tile of the goal board. And if it has an X on it, remove one of the Automa's action cubes from the current round's goal tile and return it to the Automa supply, but ignore this action if there are no cubes on the tile to begin with. The pink power symbol is only for you, and the Automa does nothing. Now, the only thing you adjust from the multiplayer rules for your turn against the Automa is the brown powers. The Automa doesn't participate in any brown powers, so if you have to compare yourself to the Automa would automatically lose, and if it says the other players gain something, the Automa doesn't gain anything at all. So you go back and forth with action cubes as usual, and at the end of the round, what you're going to do is look at the end of round goal scoring card. Now let's look at the number 3. Now to this number, you add the amount of action cubes the Automa has on this goal tile, which would be 2, bringing Automa's total points to 5. And just like you, the Automa has to have a number greater than 0 to score points for a particular goal, and it can't reach a value higher than 5. So use one of the Automa's cubes to mark its rank on the goal board, and return cubes after to a supply. After doing the goals, flip the current round tracker so the next round is visible, and you put your end of round goal scoring card next to the goal tile to prepare for the next round. Endgame is triggered after the 4th round, and Automa is scored from points by the end of the round goals, points for each face-up bird card, 3, 4, or 5 points depending on the difficulty level you chose for the face-down birds, and 1 point per egg. The Automa doesn't gain any points from the bonus card, and if you tie, the Automa has 2 leftover food tokens for the tiebreaker. That is Wingspan.